Hello, everybody. Thank you for being patient with us. I apologize for our 3-minute delay. We are going to call the meeting to order at 6:34. And we have all of our board directors in attendance except for Michael Wiggins. He's actually with our We the People team in Washington, D.C., which is very exciting. So we're thankful to him. Excuse me. And we have Sanjana joining us on the dais. So we are actually going to stand, and she's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That takes us to agenda item 2.01, which is action to approve our regular meeting agenda. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 2.01, action to approve the regular meeting agenda?
I move to approve our regular meeting agenda.
A second. Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. Thank you very much. Do we have any discussion?
President Hall, I have a request to move items 5.03 and 5.04 to the end of the presentation section, right after 5.08. The items that are listed in the 03 and 04 go in line with the finance and enrollment report, and it'll make more sense if they're done in that sequence.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any discussion? Directors, are you okay with that change? Okay. Since there's no more discussion, I'll call for the vote. With those changes, all in favor?
Aye.
The approval of agenda item 2.01, action to approve the regular meeting agenda, passes 4-0. Thank you. And that takes us to the public comment portion of our evening, but we actually do not have any public comments, so I'm going to go ahead and skip through that blurb and move on to agenda item 4.01, which is our administrative report. Superintendent Hanson, do you have a report for us tonight?
Yeah, a very brief one. Just want to share with the board that we've received the initial demographers report that we've been waiting on. Our finance office is going through that right now, looking forward to sharing it with the housing committee, and then also looking forward to setting up a work study for the board to hear from the demographer himself. So looking forward to that.
Thank you. Agenda item 4.02 is our student board representative report, and do you have a report for us?
Yes, I do. So I'm going to start off with a recap from last week. At Tahoma High School, there was the Earth Week Spirit Week, and it was with a bunch of activities that leadership and things we planned. So for this week and this following month, there is our Tahoma High School's theater play production of Anastasia, which starts on May 6th and goes through the 14th. And tomorrow, actually, there is a mod fundraiser for Tahoma High School. And it will be a fundraiser at the Maple Valley Mod Pizza to support the whole high school. And please come and support and get some pizza and just tell them that you were there for the Tahoma fundraiser. Also, this past weekend, there was a Sportsman Competition. And at the Sportsman Competition, they went to Tacoma and competed against 900 other students from over 55 different schools statewide. For this competition, Colton Bush placed first in the student forum. Ella Wilson got 6th in first aid. And there's people who made the top 20 in the category, which is Hannah, Shelby, Monse, Madison, and Colton. Also this past week, there was a robotics competition from our high school, bare metal, and we ranked 6th in this competition, and it was the world competition, so states and countries from around the world, and we ranked 6th and was the first Lions pick of the second seeded Alliance. Also, there was a We the People competition this past week, and they just, that's why Mashu is not here today, but he represents one of the students in one of the units, and they placed 6th in the nation, and that was just what they told us like about an hour ago. DECA competition, I think they believe they're on the 3rd day of their competitions, and they started, and they're in Atlanta, Georgia. So there's a number of students who participated from the student store aspect. So another way that the Tahoma community is coming together and showing what our knowledge and everything that we we've learned. Also, for this continuing the month, a big part of why a lot of the student board representatives are not here with us is because of AP testings. And with that, there is a lot of teachers that are providing students with the ability to come in for AP review sessions in person and via Zoom, which usually take place from like 6 to 8 p.m. at night. So that is it for my student report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 4.03 are our board director reports, and we will start with Director Cameron.
Yeah, like one thing that last week at Saw Elementary School, thanks to Superintendent Hanson. Really impressive school once again. Appreciate Superintendent Hanson touring me around and giving the new guy a doc. So my biggest like modules, very impressive. Very impressive to see the difference between them and the portable. And very impressed with the facilities overall. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Carrion. And Director Miller?
Yeah, just a handful of things here. One thing I wanted to just follow up on, when we met with, I think it was the PTA roundtable, when they came in, we had that work study session. One of the things we talked about was board directors participating in PTA meetings to be able to answer questions for the public and so forth. I did that with the high school a couple of weeks ago. With the PTA, it was actually an evening where incoming principal Judy Belbo and I were both there answering questions. It was terrific, a lot of great questions. Glad to see the people who were there, and so just want to follow up on that. It was a good experience. I encourage you all to do that if given the opportunity. It was a great way to and a different way to interact with our community. So it was really helpful. We're getting ready to interview the next round of student board representatives. That process starts this time of year. We're going to be kicking off the applications for that and hope to interview folks before graduation so that our outgoing seniors will be able to participate in the process. We're thankful for that. So stay tuned for more. I'm excited to have continue that tradition and that opportunity for student voice. Also participated in a call with our state auditor, which is kind of a routine process. We get audited every year by the state auditor's office, and Superintendent Hanson and I were on a call with Lori Cloud and Bill Hernandez. This was a couple of weeks ago now. Just a routine call, answering some questions that they need to ask of us, and that's coming along just fine. We'll hear more about that later. And then lastly, I just wanted to recognize the passing of former Maple Valley City Council member Linda Olsen. Linda was just a fierce advocate for our community, a tremendous collaborator, just a model public servant, and somebody that was a great partner with the Tahoma School District. And we love our relationship with the city and wanted to recognize Linda Olsen tonight. And so sad for her passing, and our condolences to Dave and her family. We lost a really good friend, and we're going to miss her. So that's what I have.
Thank you, Director Miller. Director Pendergraft?
Thank you, Director Miller. Those were such sweet words about Linda. She was a love for sure. I've had a lot of learning the past couple weeks. Again, I feel like that's all I'm doing is learning. Is my microphone working? Another bit of learning. Okay. So I was able to meet with PTA, Director Miller. I was able to meet with Lake Wilderness PTA president and also Summit Trail. So that was great. They kind of went through their different activities that they have that are bringing the year to a close. So that was great to catch up with them. And I got to do another tour of our CTE program with Superintendent Hanson and one of our community members. And that's just my happy place. I just love seeing everything that's going on in our CTE, and that's our Career Technical Education Department. And that was, if anyone hasn't seen that, I would really recommend that you guys ask, because it is so incredibly impressive, the things that we're offering to our kids, and also the things that these kids are doing. So I love visiting there. I also really enjoyed our second round of discussions at our work study about our equity policy. I think now we've maybe spent 4 hours? 4 hours now discussing. And I love that, because
to me, it really communicates how important it is for us as a district to dig in deep and find what every single kid needs to be successful. And I love that we're putting the work in and the time in to do that, and that we have such great leadership in the district to help us do that as well. So I love those work studies. I also got to spend a whole morning with our transitions program, and that was wonderful as well. I don't know if you guys know about our transitions program, but it's a place where our Tahoma students with disabilities, when they graduate, when they're 12th grade, it's a program that they move into that helps these kids transition into their adult life. And I got to spend about 3 hours with Heidi Melcher. Am I pronouncing her last name right? Melcher, I think. She's the director over there. And then also Mary Nafisi. I'm hoping I'm saying her last name right too. But they spent so much time with me just to show me what we do for these kids, and everything from I got to see them at Walgreens and Johnson's. They were working there together, which I love. They have different cohorts, and then these kids, they're just creating these wonderful friendships with each other too, and learning how to do some jobs in our community, and also creating these amazing relationships with our community, the retail and just our community partners. So I got to see them at work. I got to see them back in their classroom. They're in the portables on the students, would that be called the student side of the high school? Yeah, okay. They're in the student parking lot. They're in the portables out there. And so I got to then go in and see the different activities that they work on, the classroom activities, their life skills like doing laundry, doing dishes, budgeting. It's so great. And then I also got to see, my favorite part was when I walked in and the director, Heidi, was there and her back was to me, and she went to go hug one of her students, and so his face was facing me, and when he hugged her, it just like put a lump in my throat. The love he has for his teacher there is just amazing, and that's the love that's in that program. I mean, there's just a whole lot of love in those buildings. It's cramped, it's a bit tight, so space is an issue, but that's kind of a bigger discussion. But beyond that, I love that program, and I get to go to their graduation, so I'm really excited about that. And then last but not least this morning, Superintendent Hanson was so wonderful. He helped plan a tour for me with Cody Bowden and Mark Sutton, both of our guys that work on would that be considered maintenance then? The maintenance, but they're basically running all of these buildings and making sure that they're healthy and that they're safe and that they're working for all of our kids and our adults. And their job is giant. So the purpose of the tour was really to see some of the work that's going to be done this summer and next summer, now that we passed that approval for the HVAC repair and updates. And that was so needed. I can tell you it was so needed. Cody sleeps with his computer sometimes because things are going off every 2 hours and he has to wake up and push buttons to make sure that we're able to do this in here. One story was last summer, when we had that hot spell, they had to go to Safeway and get bags of ice and dump ice into the swamp cooler out back behind Rock Creek and Glacier Park, just to keep those chillers cold, so the kids in EEP and the summer programs could be comfortable inside. So those updates are so necessary, and I'm so happy for the work that was done around that to make sure that that's going to happen. So that's what I've been doing. Thank you so much. That's exciting to hear about all those updates. So I have 2 updates, and they're both centered around our partnership goal with Tahoma Cares. We have 5 goals that we're focusing on, and one of them is partnership. And you've heard me talk before about the amazing partnership that we have with our city leaders. And once again, every conversation that we have with Mayor Kelly and Deputy Mayor Dana Parnello, it just continues to reinforce how lucky we are to be in this community and have people who are so committed to the success of the people in our town that they are willing to reach out and work with the school district and hear what our needs are and come up with strategies that they can put in place to help support us. So thank you for your amazing ongoing partnership with us. I'm grateful. And then the other celebration I have is actually our partnership with our families.
So I'm not sure if you know, but once a month we have a meeting with our PTA and PTO groups. So the president from each of our schools comes to this building, and we get to talk about what is happening in their schools, what they're hearing their families talk about, how we can best support them and ensure that our families are getting the support that they need. And those conversations are always incredibly productive and eye-opening and helpful. And so next month, we're actually taking a little field trip to go see our CTE program because they were just so excited. They heard about all of the wonderful programs that we have for our students in the high school, and they want to see it for themselves. So again, another celebration we have for our partnership, because I know actually our roundtable meetings that we have every month are unique to Tahoma. Other school districts don't have that collaborative back and forth between their families, family organizations, and their school district. So it's certainly something to celebrate. And with that, we are going to move on to agenda item 5.01, which is our technology spotlight. And this is a shift in our meeting. So we're actually moving on to the presentation, discussion, and action item portion of the evening. And during this time, I'd just like to remind everyone that the board has agreed on using round robin to ensure that each member has equal opportunity to speak. So we're going to keep our discussion length per agenda item to 20 minutes, which I'm going to monitor, and then individual board directors' discussions to 3 minutes per agenda item, which Mrs. Wheeler is going to monitor for us. Each director's time will begin with the first word that they speak, and will continue through the responses that are provided. So with agenda item 5.01, we are joined by teaching and learning technology instructor, Kimberly Allison, and instructional coach, Carrie Hagnes. So welcome.
Welcome, thank you very much. We're excited to get to shine a little spotlight on some of the great work we're doing in technology, and I'm very thankful for Carrie being willing to come and give up some of her time tonight to help us do this. What I want to do tonight is just celebrate a little bit of our investment, both in people and products. I think when people think about a technology levy or a technology plan, they think about the stuff and the servers and the laptops and all of those pieces, but really we've made quite an investment in people as well, and I think that that's where the magic happens, which is what I want to highlight tonight for you. So I put this graphic in for you because it might be new to many of you. This was the product of our technology model committee that came together back in 2018, 2019 to help us really rethink how we think about technology. And what you just see in this graphic is our commitment to using the values of access, equity, and sustainability to support empowered learning, future-ready skills, and the future-ready plan. So that's that's sort of forms the philosophical basis for our tech plan, and then out of that, we developed like just what do we want to see in empowered learning. I don't expect anybody to be able to read that. This is just so you know it exists out of our tech plan. But really thinking about what this plan aims to do. And I highlight that from that section because one of the things that I would pull right out of that is this long-standing belief in our system that when you have high demand, you have a responsibility to provide high support. And if we are going to expect our teachers and our students to take full advantage of the technology resources we have available to improve student learning, we know that you can't just expect it, you need to come along with support. And so that's why that dual investment, I think, in the people and the products makes the difference. To give you a sense of how it looked before we had made this particular investment in people, we used to we've had technology in this system for quite a long time, and you can see that there was an overlap with teachers. Some teachers use some technology, of course, and we've had instructional coaches for quite a while, and they worked with our teachers. So we definitely had both of those things happening, but what we didn't have was this intersection of all three, which I think is really the piece that creates this spot where stuff can come together, and we really do start seeing some magic where our instructional coaches can, through their work in coaching about good instruction, bring the technology piece alongside of that. Because it's not, we've never been about, oh, here's some technology, let's use technology. It's always been technology in service of what? And that service is always in service of student learning. So, I brought Carrie along to give us a little example of just how that's played out. And when I say this investment in people, I really, of course, we're investing in our students through our levy funds by devices and tools and all the infrastructure, certainly our teachers as well. But in this particular case, our last tech levy really allowed us to invest in our instructional coaches in a way that we hadn't before. Prior to our levy, the instructional coaches were shared between buildings. So you basically had half a coach at every building. And what we did is we came in and said, if we fund half of them with the technology piece that we know we need also to help support that, then we can have a full coach at every building, not just half a coach, which was, that was before Carrie was a coach. But it was a struggle. Whenever you have to split your time and your efforts and your energy that way, it's a struggle. So I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, who's going to talk about her role as a coach and a particular product that we just started using this year that's starting to make a real difference for teaching and learning.
So we had the investment of these swivel robots that came to us, and the coaches had a lot of discussion and conversation about how to best use these swivel robots in the classrooms and how that can benefit the teachers, how it can benefit the students. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how we've been using these robots since we just really received them kind of December. We joked about them being our holiday gift. With how we're using them with the new teachers, some learning logs and our PLCs that we have going on in our buildings. And then again with,
Just a second. I was supposed to bring it because, so here you would see this robot that you can kind of see modeled in this picture where allows you to put a tablet, like an iPad in it, and then it's hooked up and the teacher, where it's a tracker, and then it follows the teacher and records. So, and it can also then record the students also, so that you get this rich ability to review and all that. Carrie will talk about that part, but since I realized all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, this is a little robot.
I have a great picture. I do have a picture of it. You'll get to see it.
Yeah.
So, and then the coaches have actually been using this swivel robot for our own coaching growth and reflection, as well as we work in our practice to help the teachers. And then I want to touch a little bit on what our vision is for next year in using these. So here, this is the view of the video that the swivel helps the iPad take the video. And this is a snip of what we, from the coach's standpoint, can see. And with the coaches and teachers, we can have kind of conversations back and forth via this app, and we can denote specifically different times in the video, like note here, this is such and such and such what we're going to see. But I specifically wanted to talk about how we're using this with our new teachers. And often, a lot of times, our new teachers are learning from mentor teachers, they're learning from expert teachers that are in the classroom. And this year and last year with all of the COVID, we've been really short on substitutes. And part of teachers going in and observing in classrooms is getting a substitute, writing sub-plans, and then taking some of their valuable time away from the classroom with their students to go do this observing. So what we've been able to do is we meet with our teachers that we're working with. We're able to say, what are some instructional goals, some practices, some areas of improvement for you, some things that you want to see. And then we can go find the teacher and set up the swivel. And this is so great because we can set it up, put the tracker on the teacher, push record, and then we walk away. And so then we can go on and do other things in the building, and then the teacher can just push stop when she's finished. And then we set up times with the new teacher to then view the video. We can look at whatever specific instructional practices they want to look at, maybe some behavioral things, maybe we're looking at routines and classroom setups. There's all sorts of different things that we can then have conversations with that new teacher that she can take back to her practice or his practice. So, and of course, with the end result being improved student learning in the classrooms. So the next thing that we've really been using the swivel for is learning walks and our PLCs. And if you're not familiar, learning walks is a type of learning that we as teachers can do with our peers and our team. And it might be one teacher modeling a certain type of lesson around a certain type of instructional strategy, or whatever it might be, a problem area that the PLC has come together and said, hey, we're noticing this trend and we need to improve our teaching for student learning in this particular area. And we would get like half-day subs for teachers, and we would be able to do these learning walks and teachers would model lessons. Great setup, great learning that happens, but again, with not having substitutes and then having to take time away from our classroom, the swivel has come into play that I can go in, record whatever it is the PLC has decided that they would like to see and learn from their teacher, and then set it up, and they can take it at their PLCs after school with the time or on a Friday afternoon, and then they can really sit down and have a conversation as a team. They can pause, they can rewind, they can really have in-depth conversations about those different practices that they're wanting to see and improve. And then again, with the end result being the improved student learning. And then this is another one of our instructional coaches over at Tahoma Elementary. And this was one of his great ideas. He said, hey, what if we take this swivel and we record our own conversations with our teachers that we're having, our coaching conversations, so that we can really improve in our practice of coaching. So he's really done this a lot. And I froze the video and I kept sending him pictures. I'm like, is this one good? Can I put this one up? Because of course we wanted to make sure it was a good one. I said, I can really tell you're smiling under that mask. So he will record his video. So he set it up so that the teacher does not feel intimidated by it at all. So the tracker, you can see the tracker on the table right there. And he set it up so that the camera's only looking at him. And I think I just forgot something. I'm gonna go back to this. You can see with the swivel right here. So you can see the back of my iPad and the base that it's in, that little round thing, that's the actual swivel robot that I was gonna point out. This was set up this morning in a classroom for a teacher who's renewing her national boards. And it is so easy to operate. She completely figured out, like I just went in and set it up once for her, and then she just swings by my office and grabs it and sets it up and pushes play and does the whole thing. So it's really, really easy. So back to the coaching. So he had the great idea of what if I recorded my conversations so I can really look at my body language. I can really listen to how I'm talking with this teacher and making sure that I'm open and making sure that I'm asking open-ended questions and all of those things that we as coaches want to do. And so he's done that, and then he goes back, and some of the rest of us coaches we're getting there. We haven't been quite as vulnerable as him quite yet, but that's in our goal for the coming months and years ahead. And so he'll go back and do some self-reflection, but even more so what's great is that he has shown the videos to us and asked us, and he'll take a certain chunk, maybe a minute time, and he's like, so how would you have reacted to this question with a teacher or whatever it may be? So then that helps the rest of us as coaches as well and helps us to really grow in our practice, especially me being in my first year. It's such a wonderful tool for me to be able to watch the other coaches around me and what they're doing and how they're talking with their teachers. And then also he has shared with our supervisor some of his videos and said, give me some feedback. What do you think? This is what we're doing. These are the great conversations that we're having. And so there's that piece of it too, because oftentimes our supervisors aren't in our coaching meetings with us, but this is a way for us to showcase and highlight what we're doing with teachers as well. So next year, I already mentioned, I did want to mention one thing. I did mention the National Board Certification. I have 2 teachers in my building that have been using it to capture their video for their national boards recertification. But today I happened to be in a classroom and they were doing it was a 2nd grade classroom, and they were doing a reader's theater around to kind of culminate their unit on South America. And the kids were doing this, and she's standing there with her camera, and she's like wanting to record and talking about voice and making sure you're nice and loud. And I was like just vibrating. I'm just like, we need to have the swivel in here, you know. So I went and talked to her after school and I was like, next time you do this, like let me know and I'll like bring this in and we can set up the microphone for the kids. And she said, actually, I need to record one more time tomorrow morning. So after school, I took like 10 minutes. We set it all up, we practiced, we made sure that the mic would work. The mic is so, it's so good that we were able to, we actually just taped it to her whiteboard and did some testing. So I'm really excited for tomorrow that she'll be able to record that. And then what is like just amazing is she can send that out to all of her families. So all of her families will get to see their kids perform this play without having to have them come into the building, which, you know, we've talked so much about equity. There's some parents that have to work at night. They can't make it at 6 o'clock. Their siblings, you know, all of those things. So the magic of bringing that into the home for the families is just really phenomenal. Next year, I hope we can do a lot more of that for our families so they can really be with us in our classrooms. But then next year, some of the things that we've thought about is cross-district professional development for teachers. There's a way that we can set these up at all of our schools, and maybe one school is focusing on reading strategies, one school is focusing on math, and there's all these different staff developments going on, but we don't have to travel to the schools. So we can go through Zoom, and somebody can be presenting, and everybody can get the staff development that they choose that they want, and we don't have the travel time in between, so we can learn even more. Sharing of student learning, kind of like I was talking about with the Reader's Theater, is another way. And then just getting better at what we're currently doing with the swivel. And I am confident that there's endless possibilities of different things that we can do with this amazing technology to really enhance the learning of our students, our teachers, coaches, and everybody. So that's, I feel like I talked really fast and for a long time, but do you have any questions?
Directors, do you have questions?
So do you have one, each coach has one of these, the swivel robots, is that right?
Yes, we each.
So one in each building?
Yes, there's one in each building, but there's been times that if we need to, we can, coaches will go bring them to the other buildings. There's one time I was absent, so another coach came in and did some recording for me that needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I feel that we need to keep an eye out for more.
We definitely wanted to start with just like, well, we think that this might have this impact.
Yeah.
And so certainly got what we felt was a reasonable place to start, and definitely I think that there would be some growing of that with some in teaching and learning. And then our secondary librarians also have them, so that for teachers as they may want to use them in some of these other ways also.
Super exciting. I love your passion. Thank you.
I was thinking maybe we could relieve Patrick Peacock from his duties and use a swivel in here.
That might be really wonderful.
Partnership?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the process for implementation in terms of training? Like what training did you go through to use this system?
That's a great question. So two of our coaches, Ian, who you saw up there, and Emily, really kind of took the lead and worked with Kimberly to learn how to use the swivel and learn all the different things that we could do, got us set up with our accounts, and then we had a couple different opportunities at some of our teaching and learning meetings where we would either come a little bit early or stay a little bit late. And really, Ian and Emily, who's the coach at Rock Creek here, really did a great job of doing a little bit of staff development with us for how to use it, how to access it. We have great ideas of, as we're doing these recordings of the teachers, to maybe splice down and make a library of different videos. So if I, as a coach, I'm saying, gosh, I have this new teacher that really needs to work on learning targets and success criteria, I could just go to this library and pull out a little snip of a 3-minute video of a teacher really talking specifically about those things. So that was a little bit of an offshoot. But yes, our other coaches dove right in, did the research, and then trained the rest of us. Yeah.
I have 2 questions. So what's the difference between the instructional coach and the teachers?
That's a great question. So an instructional coach is I'm also a teacher, but I serve as a person for the teachers to go to so that I can help them with their instructional practice. If they're needing to work on, like I mentioned before, learning targets or success criteria, maybe they're really wanting to dive into their questioning skills, all sorts of different things around their instruction in the classroom, then I'm their go-to person to help
So
them.
like, just more learning for the teachers.
Yes, yeah, yep.
Also, my second question is, how is, so is this, are the videos just shared among the teachers, and how is it like protecting the students' privacy, or like with the parents?
But I love that question. That is a great question. So we have a list of students at each building who have opted out of being in any photos or videos. And so I have that and make sure that any of the students that are on that list are not in the videos.
Also, none of these videos go anywhere beyond our little system here, except for the case of our national board certified teachers, in which case when they're submitting their videos to be reviewed outside of our system, they have signed permissions from families for that. So it's these aren't public in any way, shape, or form in that regard.
So it's just shared among the instructional coaches?
And often just with maybe the teacher, like if Carrie was the coach at your building, she might be in there, have it set up with your teacher, and then have a meeting with your teacher after the teaching. And that's what would kind of the whole shebang.
Of course, unless it's that reader stater that's sent out. And then of course we would make sure that the students that's being sent out to the families, that those students aren't on the list to not be in videos.
Thank you. And I have one quick question, but I need to check in with my fellow directors and get a thumbs up to extend so I can ask it. Is that okay? We're at 20 minutes. Okay. We're very good at thumbs up here. Yeah. So I am equally excited. I'm so thrilled to see all of the different ways that you found to use this technology. And so my question is really, as you look into the future and you think about next steps, I would imagine that the list of technology that we could invest in as a district is infinite and endless. So how do you decide what you're actually going to purchase?
It's a really great question. Really, we try, this is a good, as I was listening to Carrie, I was thinking about how this is a really good example of purchasing technology that's meeting a need. So what problem are we trying to solve? It's really hard for coaches to get into all of the classrooms. We don't have a repository where Carrie can just say, I need to see somebody who does a really good wait time or whatever that is. And so let's get this tool, let's look at some things that could perhaps meet this need and then go that direction. So it's not, you are absolutely right. There are so many shiny, amazing things, and they can cause a lot of distraction from that. And so we try to be really intentional around what's the need, what care goals can we put this together with, how could this help with belonging, how can this help with student learning, and that's actually the first question is what are we trying to improve, and then how can this come along and help? Because otherwise there's just too many things.
It's probably very fun, actually, to look at all the things. Yes.
But it's truly a challenge because it's not just us being exposed to all the cool things. I get emails from teachers daily like, hey, I just saw on Facebook this cool blah, blah, blah. Do we have that? I'm like, no, we don't. Well, can we get that? No, we can't. So, but we often have, but then we always go back to, what are you trying to do? Oh, we have this that will do this for you. Or that sort of thing. So that's how that works.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you both very much for being with us tonight. And please know, we know that you have very long days, so we appreciate your time now, but you are also welcome to leave. Now that you're done. So thank you. Thank you. We will miss you. We are moving on to agenda item 5.02, which is an action item to approve the budget request for the updated 2022-23 technology plan. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 5.02, action to approve the budget request for the updated 2022-23 technology plan?
I move to approve the budget request for the updated 22-23 technology plan.
A second? Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. Thank you both. Do we have discussion? I'm assuming so. So I'm actually going to have Kimberly stay. Yes. Hello.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Allison, Instructional Technology Coordinator, and I'm here with Trevor Davidson, our new technology technology supervisor, and Rick Lewis from our tech advisory committee to just go over, we know you read the memo, but we were just gonna highlight a couple things if that's okay. I'm gonna start by handing it over to Trevor to talk about the role that tech advisory has. Before we draft our memo to the board, we always share our draft spending plan with tech advisory, which is a group of community members. There's some teachers, and we even had students on occasion on that committee. And they approve that and go ask us really good questions before we come to you. Michael Wiggins was with us at our last meeting, but he's not here today, so he can't tell you how wonderful that was.
He's here in spirit.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. This was my first time on this tech advisory committee. It's a collection of the public. We have teachers, we have parents, we have faculty members, and we kind of weigh in on everything. I get an idea of where our spending needs to go, items that we feel are important that we bring to the group to basically get approval, get their stamp to bring it to the board and to the public in general, so that we can then move forward with approval and get that spending action plan going. This is our proposed amount that we will be spending. We have the original amount that was proposed for year 3 was this $5 million. We have upped that to a $6.5 million proposal for the new year 3 spending. This is mostly because of an underspend that was done in the prior year because of various strategy changes or the inability to purchase items because of supply chain issues and other things related with COVID that delayed us quite a bit.
This is always pretty. So we'll talk just a few of the shifts in those changes that Trevor mentioned. Shifts in strategies, we're still seeing delays due to COVID. The whole, we thought we were going to be able to do some sub-release this year. You heard earlier about the sub-shortage. No, we didn't do any sub-release. So there's a variety of, and we're also actually being very cognizant of how much we can tax our teachers right now in terms of what they're available to take on that might be new. And then of just when I was reflecting on this and thinking, you know, we wrote this plan in 2019 and the world is a completely different place. And we weren't even considering swivels in 2019, right? So every year there's some new things that we want to prioritize and that sort of piece. Some of the shifts in strategies that we can speak to, as you might know, last year we started with our strategy of a supplemented bring your own device at the secondary level where students can either bring their own device or we will give them, we will provide one for their use while they're with us. And we are starting to scale that back at the middle level to where all incoming 6th graders next year will get a device from the Tahoma School District. And then over the next couple years, we'll sort of phase that out so that by the time, in 3 years, all of the middle school will have one of our devices. We were just finding that some of the challenges of those younger students bringing their own devices wasn't really, we weren't getting the benefit for it. So this is going to help us with our supports and those types of things. The other piece that was an interesting shift in a strategy is originally we have this line item where I think it's like $30,000 each year for the work that we need to do to kind of realign our curriculum, to infuse some of the technology standards and those sorts of pieces. And well, we didn't do it in year 1 because of COVID. We didn't do it in year 2 because of COVID. And I'm starting to wonder how we're going to get this done. So since we haven't spent any of that money from a couple different line items in that, I think we're going to position ourselves to be able to get a teacher on special assignment that can help us really knock those particular needs that we have out over the next couple of years instead of piecemealing it out for over the course of 4 years. So those are some examples. Trevor can speak to our Microsoft Teams.
So this plan was originally scheduled for last summer to migrate everything to Teams. with this summer quickly approaching, we have a plan for the summer to finish that migration. With that, Teams and Google Meet have progressed to the point where Zoom is not as needed within the district anymore. So we are anticipating getting rid of the majority of our Teams licenses, or the Zoom licenses, and moving most of the teacher needs to either Google Meet or Teams. Google Meet is integrated with our Google Enterprise system and with Google Classroom, so it'll be much simpler for them to simply start one of those Google Meets. And then for other staff, Teams is going to offer the same function as Zoom does nowadays. We're going to retain some of these licenses for our public face for board meetings and other large meetings that are at scale for public.
So staff development, that's a good example of, we have quite a bit of money in our plan to support staff, which I was talking about earlier, the high demand, high support. And as you can imagine, if we were trying to offer a bunch of professional development this year after school on top of everything else that teachers are dealing with right now, that just was not good timing. So, so we again can carry that over and we can use that for new strategies as we try to support staff in those particular needs.
One of the other carryover ones that we didn't have to do while no one was on campus was to update the wireless systems. It is at the point now where we have several sites that are updated to the point of failure in some locations, as well as lack of coverage in others. So that's carryover spending that we intend to upgrade as many sites as possible and use government funding as well with that to kind of supplement the amount that we're asking in the tech fund. Some of our new spending ideas that were not in the original plan. We have a lot of fear around cybersecurity, cyber attacks, ransomware. So looking at a backup system that we do not currently have for staff and student data. This would include classroom information, teacher files, staff files, in a secure cloud location that's encrypted and not readily accessible by any kind of ransom attack. A big item that I've found in the district is a reliance on paper. So I started quickly when I was here to look at digitization options and document automation processes that would remove paper and the reliance on printers to kind of further that goal that we have of a green idea and getting away from reliance on paper. Also helping teachers and everybody with the process and not having to wait for somebody to be available, where it's an automated process they can respond to and continue it on.
And I think before we go to questions, I did want to give Rick a chance to just speak to his role in tech advisory and what that's like. He's a relatively new member and one that we have been very excited to have join us.
So I'm Rick Lewis. I've been in Maple Valley for over a decade now. I have 4 kids in the district right now. I've been at Microsoft for about 18 years and been doing product development there. One of the things you find in product development is the importance of focus groups. That you have a set of people who are passionate about your product, who maybe are area experts, that you bring in to consult to help you create something great. And I think Kimberly and Trevor here have done a good job of adopting that model by creating this tech advisory panel, like we mentioned, has parents, it has other teachers on it, has tech experts on it, and some people who are many of those things. And we're able to have this opportunity to review the work that they're doing, to review their plans, to give feedback. And in these conversations, it's really productive. We're able to say, hey, what about this? What's the cost on this? What's the benefit here? Have you heard about this? I hope to be having a conversation with one of our tech guys at the end of this week. We're going to talk about the way we manage identity in the district and how efficient are we being about automating some of those opportunities. So it's a great example of, I think, transparency with the district, how they're spending their money, and putting out the best product for technology for the students. Thanks.
And with that, we thank you for the time, and we open up the order questions.
Yes, Director Miller.
First of all, thank you all for coming to speak tonight. And thank you, Mr. Lewis, for your volunteering on this committee. Really appreciate it. It's tremendous insight. I have a couple questions. One, you talked about the bring your own device piece and focused on the middle school. And by the time they get to the high school, does it work itself out? Or are we going to do something at the high school too?
Well, we're only 1 year in.
Right.
So we don't know.
Okay.
Like, there's some of that. This buys us some time to reevaluate when our sixth graders get to that point. The issues that we're seeing are not as great at the high school as they are at the middle level. So right now, we feel like if we can tackle this, we're going to be
One step at a time.
pretty good shape.
Yeah.
And then one of the great things about the cyclical nature of this is we're reevaluating every year.
Great. The other question I had was just talked a few times about underspending in prior years and we're kind of catching up to some degree. I was wondering when we had the 3-year plan to begin with, what was the total amount that we had planned to spend then? And what's the total amount that we expect to spend now? Now that we have 2 years in the rearview mirror, like what did we spend? Are we, on a 3-year basis, are we kind of at the same place or ahead or below? Or?
Sure. With the third year of the spending, it was roughly $5.5 million per year. And at the end of year 3, we would be back onto the original cycle.
Okay.
To go into fourth year on track for the expected expenditure and collection
I see.
for that.
So it's roughly 16.5 million. If it's 5.5 times 3, then so we at the end of year 3, at the end of 23, we will have spent 16.5 million roughly.
It's expected to, yes.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Director Carrion, do you have any additional questions?
So you developed a 3-year plan, is that correct? 4-year plan. With the speed of technology, do you feel that that's the right process to go about it? Or I understand the advisory boards, there's a better process and schools help you out, but I mean, do you think you need, despite the burden of that, of developing more plans, do you think there needs to be more often research?
Yes, thanks. I do have longer term plans based on this. This is specifically based on our levy funding, which is at that 4-year cycle. The 5-year plan is a different discussion that I'm still developing, but based on my new understanding of the tech environment here and our staff and how we all interact. So there's a lot of aspects to that which I don't have anything yet prepared to present, but it will be coming here within the next, probably over the summer. I have something to present next year.
And I have a question. I am curious, as you all are going through this process, and I totally just lost my question. It was a good one too. Give me just a second. It's gonna come back to me. Well, I don't know. It was a good one. It'll come. I'll circle back and I will email you.
Do you want me to give you thinking time?
Yeah, do you have a
Okay,
question?
sure. So could you talk a little bit about, and this might be a little bit off topic, but how much of the budget is going to be going to kind of like the hotspot and the connectivity for kids who are, way out in Ravensdale or to other areas where we're not going to be able to have that good of connectivity?
Let's see.
Okay.
So along with the number that we have in the fund,
Yeah.
we also have Eci Funding, which is from the government,
Okay.
which subsidizes a lot of those emergency connectivity options. So it includes hotspots, devices for students that may not be able to have them based on our one-to-one policy.
How many kids do you think that is? Really hard to find out.
So we currently have about 2,000 hotspots in stock.
Okay.
And I don't have the number for that in front of me, I apologize, but I think we have somewhere in the range of 200 devices that are out right now between staff and students.
Okay.
The fund for specifically hotspots for home internet is $30,000 for the spending year.
Okay. And about how much is one how many will that get you? Sorry, I'm asking.
Our current spending is about $80,000 on the inventory we have. This is to take down that number because we have not utilized them. We have a lot of them sitting just vacant, unused in the office for if they were needed in case of Florida again. We actually just turned off their service. We're not paying for them anymore. We still have them. We can turn them back on as needed.
I remembered my question. So thank you, Director Pendergraft. You worked your magic. So you mentioned earlier on in the presentation that when you were developing this plan back in 2019, obviously the world was a much different place. So I'm just curious if you could speak anecdotally about the experience or I guess expertise level that you're seeing among our teachers and our students post remote learning.
Yes, I can. One of the reasons we have some money to spend in the area of professional development is because we were able to do so much professional development during those few months while school was not in session at the beginning of the pandemic, but teachers were still working. So we took advantage of that and made huge gains in some of the areas that truthfully, I haven't even had the time yet to work out the whole work plan for how we were going to achieve these goals, but it's like, oh, maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, we're going to be able to actually hit this number. And then, as we all know what happened, and then in 3 months, we achieved some of those things. So now it's about revisiting really coming at it with our current needs and our building needs, our classroom challenges, our district goals, and really thinking about now how can we use what we've learned and what we've gained to really come along and partner with our and help us solve some of our problems. To your question earlier about the cycle of the 4 years, it's really hard because you're just. Some of you know this costs this much, just like when you do your home budget, right? Like, we know how much our car payment is. We can figure out what that's going to look like for the next 4 years. But there's a lot of it that really is tied to projects, and you want the flexibility of being able to meet the actual needs that come your way. I hope we will never have anything like this again to confront. But really, we built a whole plan that really didn't anticipate anybody learning from home. So, but then we, fortunately, because we had the resources available, we were able to meet that need pretty quickly. And we were so thankful for that, definitely. Does that answer your question?
It absolutely answers the question, yes, thank you. And thank you all for all of your work and the thought and care that you put into this process, because this task, you make it look easy, but there are so many moving pieces and parts, and we are just incredibly fortunate to be able to draw from your expertise and your care for our students' success. So thank you very much. We appreciate you. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to end discussion and call for the vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda item 5.02, action to approve budget request for the updated 2022-23 technology plan passes 4-0. And now, if you are following along with our agenda item, I'll just give you a little refresher on the move that we're making. So we're moving agenda item 5.03 and 5.04 after 5.08. So we're going to skip over those for now and then come back to them. And that means that we get to see Annette Whittlesey. So she's going to be joining us.
Should be, looks like Mark.
5.05. Oh, it's not you. I got so excited to see your face. Okay, so we're all going to be thrown off. It must be a full moon. Okay, agenda item 5.05, action to approve resolution 2022-2023, authority to employ non-supervisor certificated personnel for 2022-23. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 5.05, action to approve resolution 2022-03, authority to employ non-supervisor certificated personnel for 2022-23. Yeah, good luck to anybody who wants to take that on.
I move to approve resolution 2022-03.
Second. Cheater. Okay. Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. Thank you both very much. And now, Director Cook, it is lovely to see you.
Lovely to be here. Thank you. This is the resolution that you do every spring, saying that we are offering teachers contracts for next year, because those are annual contracts. We take action through a resolution to approve those, issuing those every spring. So that's what's in front of you.
Fantastic. Do we have any questions? Okay, I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Did you give an aye? Okay. Agenda item 5.05, action to approve resolution 2022-03, authority to employ non-supervisor certificated personnel for 2022-23, passes 4-0. Thank you, Director Cook. And now we have agenda item 5.06, first reading revised policy and procedure 3424, opioid-related overdose reversal. And now we get to see Director of Special Services, Annette Wilson.
Sure, and let's see, I think 5.06 is first the special education.
Yes, yes, I copied it twice. Oh, no,
President
it's not-
Hallwell, I want to publicly take the blame for this, for having switched the order. I know that it's thrown you off.
We'll just blame you for all of this
And
craziness.
it's 5.06, which is policy and procedure 2161.
Okay. We're gonna have, the theme of tonight will be grace. We're gonna give everybody grace.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you, this is the special education update. I was here a few months ago about isolation and restraint because of the rule changes in special education. And so that was one single policy. This one is the special ed umbrella policy that covers isolation and restraint and all the other rule changes that they made, and that's what we're looking at this evening. So I'm here if there's questions about it, or just to give you a quick overview about some of those rule changes that are reflected in here. Want me to-
And could you please give us an overview and then we'll answer questions?
Okay, perfect. Very good. So the main things that have come up that were changed this time due to the rules, and remember the rule changes were because of state and federal law changes. So one was the one I mentioned about isolation and restraint. Every year we appreciate that they're always clarifying what can we use, what shouldn't be used with students, and updating our policy that way. Another is in terms of just updating definitions about universal design for learning. So that idea about how do we make sure we give lots of ways for students to express what they're learning and to demonstrate understanding. New terminology we've been all using in the last few years, but hadn't been in policy and procedure. The referral process, making sure that we have an optional form available for families. And when we talk about we for Tahoma, it's the adoption across the whole state. And so we've always had a referral form in place, not outlined necessarily across the entire state, and it's making sure every school district has that reflected in there. One interesting, good, strong point is making sure families that have a variety of languages, that they always have access to their meeting, their invitation, their documents in their native languages, and so making sure that's reflected and updated in policy and procedure.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much. And that takes us to agenda item 5.07, which is our first reading revised policy and procedure 3424, our opioid-related overdose reversal.
And we're very lucky tonight. We have our nurse coordinator, Jennifer Lyons, here with us to be able to respond to questions. We had been here a few years ago with this policy, and at the time, it was specifically talking about only having this available at our high school site. And it's since expanded and allowed us to put it at both middle schools too, so expanding and changing the wording to secondary. But Jennifer, you're here in case you want to give a little update or answer questions.
At the time, this was a question that the board asked us when we implemented this policy, is why we just chose the high school, and that was because that was the WASDA's recommendation, and that was the state's recommendation at that time. We originally looked at the plan and put middle schools, but due to the changing nature of and size and needs of our buildings, we decided to go with secondary instead of middle school. Just in case there is a change, we don't have to address this policy again for a while, and we're hoping to stop at the secondary schools and not have to bring it in lower. So, any questions? I do want to point out that I have Anna Pachelska-Sitars here sitting next to me. She helped to implement this policy initially at the high school. She's done training for the staff there, and will be involving security officers and other building personnel, as well as the administrator of the building in the implementation of this process.
Okay, Director Miller.
So just to be clear, this is us choosing to update this to secondary schools as opposed to WASDA changing their recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And I just had a question about capacity. So in terms, you mentioned all of the work that Anna's done to get it in place at the high school level. Do we have the capacity right now to be able to roll this out in our middle schools?
We actually, as we started to implement this policy, we went ahead and started to pursue obtaining the Narcan for the schools. So it's already ready to implement. Now it's just taking a look at the policy and making sure that both of the staff then get the training done for building personnel and implement it the way we think it should look. So that involves details like where should the Narcan be kept, because it is different than other drugs. Naloxone is not kept under lock and key like most of our medications because you can't hurt anybody with it. So any layperson can administer this drug, which is unusual. So the hope is that we'll avert a crisis like what we've been seeing.
Excellent, thank you.
And just to clarify, so it's to have one Narcan at each school then? I mean, secondary and our high school.
Correct. However, we do have, we have had personnel in our buildings before, like our, yes, our resource officer, so Carl. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name, but he does carry on his own, and private citizens do have the capability to carry this drug on their own.
And then is there, is it difficult to obtain Narcan right now?
It is not.
Okay.
Literally, when we decided to implement this policy, I asked the nurses at the middle school to get with Anna, and they've already obtained the Narcan. So all we're waiting is for your approval to put forward this policy.
Okay, since we don't have any other questions, I want to take this moment. We have two of our amazing nurses in this room, and so I'd like everybody to join me in giving them a round of applause because you all have done phenomenal work.
Thank you to all the people who helped us over the last couple of years because my director supports me. The nursing staff that we have in our buildings, we have a highly educated group of women in our buildings. They're licensed professional nurses and registered nurses. We even have a master's degree level prepared nurse. 3 of our nurses are working towards their ESA certifications. This is a specialized certification that nurses don't get in nursing school, but they are pursuing that for the purpose of furthering their knowledge base to support your community and your students. And after COVID, they did a lot. Lori helped. She brought forward other additional staff members, and we hired a couple of additional nurses, and I do really appreciate that they were seen and got your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for supporting our kids because what you do is such a critical piece of the puzzle, and so thank you both. We're really incredibly grateful.
I'm just gonna say I got to do actual nursing a lot the last couple of years, and I love it rather than being behind the desk. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to agenda item 5.08, which is our finance and enrollment report. And we have District Accountant Bill Hernandez and Assistant Superintendent Lori Cloud joining us.
Jennifer, Anna, you guys don't. Have a good evening.
All right, thanks for letting me be here. AJ, can you scroll down to page 2 for me, please? Thank you, sir. Can you change things up and start on the expenditure side of things first before we go over revenue? Going over March expenditures, March came in $40K over what we had budgeted. This is primarily related to a timing difference with our running start tuition invoices. In prior years, we typically get these in April and pay them in April. This year, we received them in March, so we decided to pay them in March. That being said, we should see a corresponding savings in April, and specific to our purchase services expenditures. The reason why it was only $40K over budget instead of the $525K, which is the full amount of the running start tuition invoices, was because it was almost entirely offset by savings from our classified and certificated salaries expenditures, which we've seen and talked about every month throughout the year. Jumping over to the revenue side of things, and I want to focus on that orange estimate column. If you look at the very bottom, you have a $27.8 million ending fund balance. And if you look right above that, you have that total loss for the year. It's an estimated loss of $7.2 billion. Last month, that amount was 6.2. I'm going to explain and walk you through why that has increased the full amount of $1 million. AJ, if you scroll down to page 4 for me, please. All right, there's a famous song by a rapper. Started from the bottom, now we're here. Okay, started from the bottom, $9.8 million budgeted loss. Our estimated loss is now $7.2 million. The primary reason for that, and what you've seen different from last month to this month, starts off with that $1.6 million loss due to the CARES funding, and that is money that we were budgeted to receive this year in 21-22. We decided to earmark that for next year for the 22-23 budget, and that's being earmarked to ramp students back up due to COVID-related closures. Another thing that we've added here is a minus $257K decrease due to a lowered amount of our collectible LEA funding for the calendar year of 22-23. So that extends to both this year, this school year, as well as the next school year. You'll see that during our revenue projections that Lori will talk about later on. Another significant impact was our reduction in our capital projects fund transfers due to the lower than budgeted salary that we've seen, salary spend we've seen year to date. Next major change from last month was anticipated safety net funding. We bumped that up, which is a good thing, by $500,000 due to an increase that we decided to make following prior year trends we've seen from that funding. Another two positive boosts in our direction were the $650K in food services funding, as well as the $240K in miscellaneous other. For those of you who don't know, that would include things like grants, donations, insurance recoveries, those types of funds that we just lump into one and call it miscellaneous other. Jump down to the unexpected expenditure side of things. We have the $1.6 million in CARES funding, so we have that $1.6 million above in revenue that we're not getting this year, and $1.6 million in expenditures that we're not spending this year, net to zero, so there's no impact there. So if you add all of that, all of our major unexpected revenue changes and expenditure changes, you get a total estimated loss of $7.2 million for the year. Any questions on March financials estimates?
I'm curious, as we get closer to the end of the year, getting closer to closing the books, I would assume that this estimate is getting closer to the actual number that we will land on. Am I correct with that assumption?
We'll see these numbers get tighter and tighter every month. We really, Bill and I spent a significant amount of time this month really delving into specifics, kind of getting, like I said, fine-tuning those numbers. The one item that's still really out there that we really won't know till the end of the year is our safety net funding. We talked about that, we really don't receive that. We'll have a hint of it towards the end of June, but we don't receive that funding until the end of the year in August. So that's the one item that there really is no way to get a tighter estimate until the committee allocates those funds. But yes, correct, we're tightening up both revenue and expenditure estimates every month.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for continuing to work on the story behind these numbers. I feel like I have so much more clarity month after month as you go through this process with us, so I'm so grateful to you for taking the time to do that, because I know it's extra work on your end.
Since it's the topic of finance, just related, how's the audit coming along?
We're on track to finish by the May 20th deadline. It's been an interesting year from the state auditor's office. They are extremely short-handed. So right now they hired a bunch of new people, and I've actually worked with 7 different auditors this year, which is a record that I've never actually heard of before. So it's a lot of learning on their side, how to go about an audit specifically for school districts. So it's a lot of teaching from me to them. But hey, as long as we finish on time and it's a clean report, it's all that matters.
Thank you.
And I'd like to give kudos to Bill. That speaks of it lightly when he talks about, but the amount of time that this takes out of his day every day, and what he has to spend in other hours getting all the other things that need to get completed as far as financial statements and budgeting that we're working on. So you're doing a tremendous job in that.
And just because people might hear audit, and I know Pete mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that this is voluntary, but could you just explain why we would voluntarily open ourselves up to this every year?
So we are audited by the state auditor's office. We are not required to have the actual formal audit every year. They changed the laws a few years ago that we would actually be able to go every other year because our audits are so clean. We've got a good standing with the state auditor's office. We made the decision to continue. We still have to get our federal audit every year, so they have to come back every year. But the state audit portion, we could not have every year. For two reasons, we made the decision to continue with that. The one reason is our bonds that we currently we've sold, and those that hold those bonds, we have a commitment to them that we will have our financials audited annually. So for that reason alone, but then also just from a transparency and to ensure that there's nothing that's getting missed. We have a complete audit on an annual basis.
Thank you. When the audit comes back, where will it be how will it be available?
Absolutely. Every year we have an exit interview with the auditor's office, and there are our financial representative from the school board will be there. Director Miller will be in attendance of that meeting, and so he'll be able to give an update to the board as to the outcome of that audit. You will also get copies of that audit as well, so you'll see it as a presentation to the board.
Thank you.
And because it's a public document, you can find it at the state auditor's website too. It's out there. Yeah, on the interwebs. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else for us for this agenda item?
Not for this agenda. We're going to kind of roll the next two items in together. That's why thank you for gracing us with the change.
For messing up the agenda, yes, you're
Gracing us
welcome.
with the change. I appreciate that. We just felt it would flow better, and I apologize for not noticing it earlier, to kind of give the update on the estimate that you saw. I'm going to start off, if you just want to pull up that PowerPoint. We have a few slides that we put together, just bullet items based upon the revenue projections that were in the board packet.
President Paul, do you want to announce which item?
Yes, so we are now on agenda item 5.03, which is a revenue projection assumption.
So revenue projections, click to the, was it up here?
It might be underneath there.
Just want to talk about some of the revenue assumptions that we've made, and we've previously talked a few of these. Major items that contribute to our bottom line revenue each year, we know our enrollment numbers, and then what we anticipate for our AV growth. So we previously talked about the AV growth. It was significantly higher than what we anticipated this year. If you recall, we were budgeting about a 4%, ended up being 17.5% growth this last year, so significantly higher than what we anticipated. Right now in the budget, we are estimating 4% for the following year. And we'll continue to monitor that if we receive any adjustments from the board. And right now we have committed to keeping at the $2 per 100,000 for revenue, and don't anticipate going above that number. The other item that is enrollment, and as Mike mentioned earlier, we received an updated demographers report just last week and started delving into those numbers and what's different with those numbers, and just a high-level synopsis of what we see just for this. You know, I'm not going to talk in the outline years. I'm really focusing on next year because we're talking about budget right now. We previously looked at using low range. He uses a low, medium, and high projection, so he gives us 3 different sets of numbers, and we made the decision and had a discussion with the board to go with the low, just based upon what we experienced last year. I will say this is the most in-depth report we've received from Mr. Kendrick, so really excited about the amount of time and specific details that he put into this plan, and really going through individual neighborhoods of what he's seen as trends. So feeling really comfortable with his numbers.
The low numbers, just to compare his low to low, went down around 150 below what if you looked at what he said was going to be last year for 22-23 and what the new numbers say for 22-23. So it goes about 150 head count difference, which isn't significant, but that is a significant number from a revenue standpoint. I spent some good time today looking at that analysis and also reading through some areas in his plan, and then I actually gave him a call to get an idea of what he thought from a gut. Normally, historically, we used his medium range projections. And so asking him where he thought we were really going to be for next year, he is confident that he believes we should go with the medium range projections, which was, he said if you want to be extra conservative, he'd go with the low, but he's saying medium. So when I look and compare those projections to what I have in there right now, we're really, really close. I'm going to have to make some adjustments, small adjustments by grade level, potentially, and then move. He also went into very specifics by boundary area, by school. So I'm needing to look at a couple of grade levels at a couple of our elementary schools and maybe moving some of our projections around. But I don't see a significant change or impact with those new projections. So those are the two big ones that we always focus on. One of the items that we have not budgeted for, but we've been happy to receive the last 2 years were the enrollment stabilization dollars from the state. And so we're again receiving approximately $1.5 million of stabilization, which you see in the estimate numbers for this year. We're not budgeting for any and do not expect any additional stabilization dollars for next year. So keeping that in mind. We've also anticipate our special education enrollment increasing. So reflecting those numbers in our special education, both state funding, and then also needing to make a decision on our safety net. We made the decision at this point, we've just got $1.5 million in there for next year, but that will be a discussion at the board. And maybe wanting to adjust that to a different level, depending what we see the numbers come back. If we have an idea in June that it's going to be significantly higher, we might want to take a look at that. We already mentioned, Bill already mentioned on the CARES dollars, the ESSER dollars. Those are the federal dollars that we received from the federal government for COVID. And if you recall, we received, they call it ESSER. So it's ESSER 1, 2, and 3. We've actually already spent out and received the grant for ESSER 1 for this current year, and are going to be making a grant request for our ESSER 2 dollars to be received this year, which will offset some of those COVID expenditures. Those were in the estimate previously. But as Bill mentioned, we're going to pull those ESSER 3 dollars out of this year's budget and reflect them in 22-23, just due to the fact of where we're at in our planning and the process that we're using. As you know, that Dawn and Annette are deeply involved in coming up with really good protocols and procedures on what those dollars are used for and the implementation of those dollars. So you'll see those reflected in 22-23. Those are the big items from a revenue standpoint. I do see LEA dollars are decreasing as our SS valuation goes up. Our ability to collect LEA dollars goes down because it's on an average of SS valuation throughout the state and those dollars per student. So we see that number will be continuing to decline if our SS valuation grows at a higher rate than that of the state on average. Any questions on the revenue side?
Chapter 9?
Couple. I wondered, switching to the federal dollars, I wonder if you could give us a little bit of an update on that landscape and the funding there. I noticed that the numbers were the same, so maybe we're not there yet, but I just thought I'd ask what that's looking like.
Absolutely.
What's going to happen?
Absolutely. We don't receive any inkling from the federals on our federal grants until more likely, we start seeing it in May, beginning of May. I see we see a couple of them, at least at estimated numbers, and then by June, we've got a majority of those estimates coming. I would anticipate us seeing an increase in our special education federal dollars. A couple of reasons due to the fact they keep talking about that there's anticipation of something coming through there. They're going to be funding, and also because our enrollment is going up in that area. So I'd expect our special education federal dollars to increase. We have seen our title dollars decreasing over the last couple of years, so I wouldn't anticipate a big increase there unless they do something different, but I don't think we're anticipating any increases. I look to Dawn and Annette because they sometimes hear things before I do on those dollars. All the other dollars are pretty consistent. As I said, the CARES dollars will be in there. The reason why I don't have them in there in the projections right now is because we were going to add the expenditure in there, and I didn't want us to forget about one, put the other one in. So that's why you don't see the 1.6 in there yet for revenue, because we haven't put the expenditure in yet. And then food service is another one that we're working on that we hope to have all the data by the end of this week. If you recall, the last 2 years, we've been running a free program that's been funded by the federal government. That program is going away at the end of this school year. And so we're going to be going back to our, I'm going to say old, but that's not the right word, our previous program where it's funded based upon actual, it's based upon need, which means our free and reduced rates for funding. There's a small amount that we will receive from the state, and then we receive per lunch amounts as well through the federal government. Those numbers are going to go back to normal rates and what we would see, and then we'll have our local revenue, so those students that purchase lunches will be receiving our local. So we're waiting, Mary's been working on our budget. We should be receiving it in the next couple of days with the counts, and once I have the counts from her, we'll be able to plug those in and do some estimates. It's going to be interesting. That's an item that's really going to be a little bit of a guesstimate, because we anticipate the numbers going down because it's not free anymore. We have a lot of students who are taking advantage of that program. But we do anticipate, we were at some pretty high rates before COVID hit with the program that we run and the variety, particularly at the secondary level. So we will monitor that. We'll need to adjust for needs from the staffing as well as we go through that.
It's like you knew I was going to ask it. The food service piece was the second question I had, so bravo. Thank you.
So I saw when I was working in the cafeteria with the ladies, they were monitoring and counting every single student, every single lunch. So that's the data that you'll use then to help kind of create that budget for what you're expected to see.
Right, so yes, we keep counts because we need to do counts and report those counts to get reimbursement from the federal government, but we haven't been running those counts through our normal system because no one's actually, the students aren't paying for them and they're not free and reduced students, so it's been a little bit more of a manual process the last couple of years. But yes, we're using those counts and then really looking at the accounts previous to COVID, anticipating going back to those rates. But we had seen, like I said, some pretty steep increases, particularly at the secondary level. There was some pretty hot excitement around some of the things we were able to offer at that secondary level.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. And then the 22-23 revenue projections, what's in the local revenue other line?
Yeah, those are all of the kind of miscellaneous items that are in there. Grants are in there. The big items, interest is in there. One of the big dollar amounts that's in there is our EEP, our Extended Enrichment Program. That's right, this year budgeted for 21-22, we're at like $1.2 million. We're going to be making a recommendation. We need to increase prices significantly in our Extended Enrichment Program because we did not raise prices last year. And due to what we've, our salaries and wages have gone up significantly because of the IPD that's in there. So you're going to see that probably go up to like $1.7 million in revenue. We also have $3 million that we put aside for contingency. We put it in as both the revenue and we put it in as an expenditure. So there's no bottom line impact. But the way that the budget works from the state is we get a budget that the board approves and that OSPI approves, and we cannot go over that number. So if for some reason an expenditure came in that we needed to pay, if it was over that, we need to go get what's called a budget extension. I've done it once. We don't want to do it. So if we have the opportunity for additional revenue, if we were to get an additional grant, the revenue is there, but then we wanted to spend it, we want to make sure we have capacity. Or if something extraordinary happened, that the board made the decision, we're just going to spend some fund balance, we're going to open use contingency, giving the opportunity to do that. So that's the other $3 million. Those are the two big items.
So 2022, 23, that's still continues.
Yes.
Are athletic fees in there too? And
Yeah,
and
athletic
club
fees
fees
are in
and
there.
other
Yes,
fees?
there's about $110,000 of athletic fees.
Okay, so that concludes that agenda item, unless you have something else for us. Okay, then we will move on to agenda item 5.04, which is our salary projections.
Here we are. Just to give you an idea, we're really not going to talk much about numbers with where we're at on these. I'm just going to give you some high level and kind of a status of where we're at, and then Bill's going to pitch in whenever I miss something or he wants to add something that we've missed. But really, talking about the salaries and wages, like I said, we've got the demographics report, so making sure that there's no additional needs there. At this point, I don't see it. I think we're going to be able to use the projections that we currently are looking at, or at least close to that. We got our first run through of a roll-up. We call it a roll-up. We just basically take our expenditures from this year and then roll them forward, what they look like. So we roll everyone up 1 year with 1 more year of experience in the system, which might move them over into this salary schedule. So we do that, and then we also add in IPD, which is the implicit price deflator, the basically inflation for the year that the state will be funding, and that was 5.5% for this next year. So we've added that number in for both certificated, classified, and administrative. The first run is there's always lots of questions, so we're filtering through all that, making sure what needs to be corrected. First run through, it was about $8 million higher than what we're estimating this year to be. So it's significant, but we're going to make sure that that's correct, and that's without adding any additional staffing. So there's some additional staffing that we will need to add, so that number could go up from that number, or will go up from that number. So more to come on that. We anticipate with the next board report that will give you, hopefully be able to give you kind of a snapshot of where we're at right now as far as expenditures. All of the MSOC budgets are rolling in, and we expect to have all those completed by the end of this week and rolled up. Right now, we're just looking at last year's numbers budgeted and what our estimates are for this year. But all of the department budgets are coming in as well, so we'll update those numbers. And that's about it. Any questions on the expenditures, salary, wages, or other expenditures? Did I miss anything there?
There are no questions. So thank you both. We appreciate it. We are going to jump down now to agenda item 6.01, which is action to approve our consent agenda. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 6.01, action to approve our consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second. Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. Thank you. I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 6.01, action to approve our consent agenda, passes 4-0. And that brings us to agenda item 6.02, which is action to approve the minutes of the March 15th, 2022 work study session. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 6.02, action to approve the minutes of the March 15th, 2022 work study?
I move to approve the minutes of the March 15th work study.
A second. Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Since there's no discussion, I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 6.02, action to approve the minutes of the March 15th, 2022 work study, passes 4-0. And that brings us to agenda item 6.03, which is action to approve the minutes of the March 24th, 2022 revised special board meeting. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 6.03, action to approve the minutes of the March 24th, 2022 revised special board meeting?
I move to approve the minutes of the March 24th, 2022 revised special board meeting.
Second. Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. Do we have discussion? I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 6.03, action to approve the minutes of the March 24th, 2022 revised special board meeting, passes 4-0. Agenda item 6.04 is action to approve the minutes of the March 25th, 2022 revised special board meeting. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 6.04, action to approve the minutes of the March 25th, 2022 revised special board meeting?
I move to approve the minutes of the March 25th revised special board meeting.
Second. Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. Thank you. Do we have any discussion? I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 6.04, action to approve the minutes of the March 25th, 2022 revised special board meeting passes 4-0. Agenda item 6.05 is action to approve the minutes of the April 5th, 2022 board meeting. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 6.05, action to approve the minutes of the April 5th, 2022 board meeting?
I move to approve the minutes of the April 5th board meeting.
Second. Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. Thank you. Do we have discussion? I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 6.05, action to approve the minutes of the April 5th, 2022 board meeting passes 4-0. And we're moving right along. So we're on agenda item 6.06, which is action to approve our certificated personnel report. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 6.06, approval of our certificated personnel report?
I move to approve our certificated personnel report as revised.
Second. Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. We'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 6.06, approving our certificated personnel report as revised, passes 4-0. Agenda item 6.07, action to approve our classified personnel report. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 6.07, approving our classified personnel report?
I move to approve our classified personnel report as revised.
A second. I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 6.07, approving our classified personnel report as revised, passes 4-0. Agenda item 6.08, which is action to approve our coach personnel report. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 6.08, approving our coach personnel report?
I move to approve our coach personnel report as revised.
A second. Director Miller motioned and Director Pendergraft seconded. Thank you. I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And agenda item 6.08, approving our coach personnel report, passes 4-0. That brings us to agenda item 7.01, which is BITS, which is an acronym for Board Inquiry Tracking System. And Superintendent Hanson, do we have any new updates on our BITS?
Nope, still looking forward to discussing it at the retreat on the 3rd.
Excellent. And that brings us to agenda item 8.01, which is adjournment. So we are going to adjourn our meeting at 8:10 p.m. tonight. Thank you everybody for joining us. We always love seeing your face, and have a great evening.
The adjournment?